Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
I never gave in to desperation. I certainly had many moments of going, ooh boy, this is a nervous time, or I'm not feeling too secure right now, but desperation will kill you.
This might be the most people we've had at one time. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm going to just jump right in here. Thank you all so much for joining me on the podcast today. Listeners, I am Jack. I'm the awards editor at Backstage. I'd like to go around the quote-unquote room, the Zoom room, to let listeners know everyone who is here. Longtime listeners of this podcast are familiar with everyone here, which is why this is sort of like the returning all-stars, the greatest hits of the podcast. I think that's what we're doing here. I want to start with Jamie. Jamie, do you want to reintroduce yourself and what you do with the podcast?
Sure. I'm the producer. I do all the techie bits to make it sound as good as possible. And I've been OG member of Team Podcast with you, Jack, and Casey, all the way back, however many years it's been now. And we put it all together and we have a good time doing it.
Wonderful. Okay, and then podcast listeners, the next step in the podcast production process is editorial. I don't know why I'm going in this. I'm partly going in this order because that's what the Zoom is, but it also is coincidentally the order of production. Ben, would you like to tell listeners who you are?
Hello, listeners. I'm Benjamin Lindsay. I'm the managing editor at Backstage, so working on the editorial side of things, kind of in the print operations, and then also working with Jack on things like the podcast. So I've been here since day one. I've been on the podcast before, but if you're a new listener, welcome. And I'll pass it off to whoever's next.
It's the other editorial team member here, Casey.
It's the other editorial team member here. It's one of two Caseys. You'll shortly find out it's the lesser of the two. I'm Casey Mink. And longtime listeners have definitely heard me talk about, say it with me, Tony Shalhoub on this podcast. But he's not going to be my performance choice this year because he didn't do anything.
Oh,
so
sure.
We're getting creative.
Oh, sure. Well, that is a natural segue into, I believe, somebody who has also a lot of favorites and who has stated all of them on the podcast. Katie Menard, you're next in the process of making this podcast happen. Would you like to reintroduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Katie Menard. I'm the social media manager at Backstage. So I manage our social media, which includes posting the podcast to social and seeing everything everyone has to say about the episodes. And yes, I have talked about favorites of mine on this pod before. Recently, yeah.
And last but certainly not least, we are going to go with the term fairy godmother of the podcast. Casey Howe.
Hi, guys. I am Casey Howe. I run awards media at Backstage, and I am very grateful for this podcast and love it, and think that everybody does such an amazing job to make it happen. And it's magic every week. It's just magic. So I hope everyone listening is enjoying. So please keep listening.
Thank you for saying that, Casey. Thank you to all of you for all of the work you do putting this podcast together. Here we are on this will air on December 30th. We are just taking an opportunity here to look back on the year in acting, in film and TV, I think. All SAG-eligible film and TV performances are currently being considered by voters. And just like we did last year, I want to go around and get everyone's favorite film or TV performance. I'm going to go first to demonstrate how this works. My favorite film or TV performance of the year that aired in 2021 is Ed Helms and Patty Harrison in the film Together Together. I went back and forth. I had a lot of different choices, but I'm going to go with We're talking about favorite. I'm not saying best. Best is very up for debate, but I'm going with favorite because if I think about performances that left me feeling, that give me a warm feeling every time I think about them, or that bring back lovely, beautiful memories, those two performances come to mind. Together is a film about a father-to-be and the woman he hires to be his surrogate. It's structured like a rom-com, but it's a platonic friendship. I just find it so extraordinary. So funny and silly, but those two performances also have a lot of depth, and I really, truly can't stop thinking about them. That's my example. I'm so curious to hear what you all think, starting with Jamie. Again, we're going to go in this same order. Jamie, do you have a pick?
In terms of my favorite performance of the year, I was partly paying attention to what you just said. Yes, it's completely unoriginal, I think. I just finished Succession, and, you know, so many of that cast are incredible, but of course, Tom, is it Matthew McFadden? How do you pronounce his name?
McFadden, I believe, yes.
McFadden. His arc this season and over the course of the whole show has been such a joy to watch. And just, I mean, the whole cast, you could pick anyone from that cast and they just did amazingly. It's fresh in my mind because I finished it like 2 days ago. So yes. That's the thing that's still resonating with me. I
heartily agree. Ben, you are next.
Well, to tie into your guys' choices, Together, I saw it streaming on Hulu. I saw it in theaters, but really got to rewatch it this holiday break. Yeah. Loved that one. And the reveal of Succession, honestly, one of the just moments of the year. So I second that choice of Matthew. I think I'm going to go with a comedy for my favorite performance, or in this case, performances. The other two on HBO Max just had a perfect season, and led by Drew Tarver and Helena York and Molly Shannon. It really is just some of the funniest stuff that you're going to watch this year. Just a great Hollywood and fame satire, which is kind of up my alley. So those are my choices.
So good. Casey Mink, I'm so curious to hear what your pick is.
I think that you're being sarcastic, right? Because you know exactly what it is.
No, I think it could be like one of three things.
Okay, yeah. Well, when I do say it, you're going to be like, oh, no, it was one of one thing. And I will say, actually, that you said, you know, yours is your favorite, but not necessarily the best. I think mine is my favorite. And I do think empirically it's also the best. Because I do believe that
she's
Kate
so
Winslet,
humble. She's so humble.
Yeah, thank you.
You know,
famously humble. I do believe that Kate Winslet as Mayor Sheehan on Mayor of Easttown is the single greatest performance ever committed to film, literally ever. I said it and I mean it. She did get that Emmy. I also think that SAG award is, you know, in the bag. Yeah, I mean, name a better acting moment of the year, of the decade, than the moment that she is watching that iPad footage and she realizes that it's, spoiler alert, you know, Ryan, and that little gasp that escapes her mouth, just, that's authentic. That's acting. I'm going to say it. That's acting.
That's so good. That's thank you. That's provides a
You're
very
welcome.
Concrete, very pinpointed, example
you're
of great
welcome.
acting. Yes. Thank you,
are
Kate
welcome.
Winslet.
Thank you, Kate Winslet.
Katie, same to you. I feel like there are three options, / you may have already told me what you're picking.
Yeah, Casey stole my line, which is I was going to say mine is my favorite and also the best, but it's film, so we're not overlapping. And I also think it's my favorite because I love being right, and I feel like I have this has been a big payoff for me throughout multiple decades of my life at this point, which is Kristen Stewart and Spencer. I have been saying Kristen Stewart is one of the best actors of our generation since I was in like middle school. So I like to finally see the recognition. My multi-year long Oscar campaign is finally coming to fruition.
Oh, yeah.
But also the performance is incredible. I do think it is probably, you could argue between a couple other of her performances, but I do think is her best performance to date. And she really is the center of that film. And in a year or two of many Diana performances,
I was going to say,
I think hers stands out. Casey will fight me on that, but
I know. Can we do one little wild card theater performance, which is just to say that the Broadway Diana, Gina Duvall. Okay, fine. I won't.
No, absolutely.
I did set you up for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it closed after 33 performances, but I was there for 31 of them.
Oh my God. Wait, what?
I wasn't, but I wish I was.
Oh, okay.
I was like, that's not true.
I do think that mentioning literally all of the Princess Diana projects this year, like it needs to have been mentioned on this podcast by now, like at least the Kristen Stewart movie, that this really was a year for extraordinary stories about Princess Diana. And yeah, Kristen Stewart's is a really great example. Last but not least, Casey Howe. Wait, Casey Howe, what is your pick? Oh God.
Okay, so I am going to, just as I gave Casey Mink a hard time for being so humble, I am going to infamously not follow directions, which I'm very much known for. So I'm going to pick two. I'm going to pick one film and then one television because I want to. For film, I think we have seen probably Jessica Chastain's best performance maybe ever in the eyes of Tammy Faye. I thought she was just brilliant. And that to me is a really tricky character because you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to make her into a caricature, but she really came through. And I thought that was just a really powerful performance. This is a amazingly competitive year when it comes to female performances and female lead performances. And so I think, unfortunately, as far as a contender is concerned, she may not get the recognition, but I do want to give that movie a shout out. That movie is also like right up my alley. Like talk about a crazy borderline cult manipulative religious group. And I mean, I'm in, sign me up all day long.
High camp.
Oh yes. And high camp, like, come on. Yeah. So, that was one of the first movies that I saw in the theaters back. Well, not the first movie, but one of the ones that I'm like, I'm going to the theater for this. You can't stop me. So I was all about it. And then for TV, my favorite performance, which is a little a not well kept secret amongst the Backstage team members, is the show in general, Dope Sick. I think that it should be required watching for every American. And Michael Keaton's performance in it. He is a national treasure and no one can tell me otherwise. And if you disagree with me, then whatever. I love him so much in this, amongst other things. And I think that his, this performance was, very right up Michael Keaton's alley, but also he nailed it. And the character was just really powerful. And I think to see that, and it was perfect casting. And he just continues to show us his range and wonderfulness. And so Dope Sick.
I 100% agree. And thank you so much for providing the perfect segue into today's episode, which was not at all coerced or planned.
Actually, Jack, before you do that, as no one's following any rules for this banter today, can I slightly adjust my answer?
Yes, dive in. I loved yours, though. Yours was good.
We also needed to shout out Succession. I think we had this is a good range.
Well,
I can't go unmentioned.
Casey M mentioned a moment, and there was a moment in that episode that wasn't particularly to do with Matthew McFadden. It was Sarah Snook's reaction to the reveal that was just, I think, even greater than his performance. So I just wanted to slightly amend
I think
my
that
answer.
made that scene.
Well,
when you see it on her face,
there's
like you can't stop thinking about.
Yeah.
There's like conspiracy theories online that like she sort of like put her hand to her abdomen, and so everyone thinks that she's pregnant.
Yes.
I spend too much time on
even
the
if she isn't,
internet,
just the implication of that is
Talk about
really plays into that dynamic.
Talk about good acting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So true.
And back to your segue, Jack. I'm so sorry to ruin that for you.
It's fine.
I love
national treasure,
answers.
Michael Keaton.
I actually agree so much with all of your answers. Really.
Yes, I agree.
These are excellent choices.
Yeah,
Thank
Michael
you,
Keaton is so good on Dope Sick.
So good.
Episode 4.
And Casey, what you were saying about if anyone disagrees, I think that after listening to this interview, anyone who doesn't agree that Michael Keaton's a national treasure will agree. Because he sheds a lot of light on his creative process. And obviously with him, there's so much to get into in terms of his playing the everyman in a lot of his roles, but also playing larger than life characters like Batman.
Yeah.
And national treasure is a very apt phrase. So thank you, Casey, for for helping me introduce him. And thank you all for joining us. We are going to take a quick break and then introduce Michael and get to this interview. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
Happy New Year. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to all the listeners. Thank you, guys. Happy New Year. Happy 22.
Yeah.
Happy 22.
This podcast is, of course, brought to you, listeners, by Backstage. Listen, aside from all the great inspiration and tips and all of that stuff we offer for free, like this amazing podcast, Backstage also gives you access to incredible casting calls all over the world. That is why it's the world's #1 casting platform. If you're curious, or if you're an actor yourself and you really want to jumpstart your career and you're ready to take the advice and the inspiration you've heard here in this very episode and use it, go to backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE, ENVELOPE. That's, again, 30 days completely free to try Backstage, where you can make a profile, upload a headshot, upload a reel, start browsing the casting notices, and start applying to jobs, because who knows, maybe one day I'll be interviewing you. Again, that's backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE. Michael Keaton has repeatedly reinvented himself in big screen projects, from his breakout in Night Shift all the way to playing Bruce Wayne in the Batman films, a role he is reprising in the upcoming The Flash and Batgirl movies. His background in theater and stand-up comedy led to iconic roles in Mr. Mom, Beetlejuice, and more, and he's received accolades for Spotlight, the Academy Award-nominated Birdman, and last year's SAG Award winner, The Trial of the Chicago 7. This year he starred in the Netflix film Worth and Hulu's limited series about the opioid epidemic, Dopesick. Here is the legendary Michael Keaton. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Are you doing a bunch of press?
Yeah. I mean, a good bit, but not the load isn't too heavy.
Congratulations on Dopesick. I've been really enjoying the show, and I can't wait to ask you about it, because I do think it's a really good way to talk about the way you approach characters. I'm going to get you to open up about all of your deepest, darkest acting technique secrets. So that's what we're going to do today.
Okay.
But first of all, can I just ask you, like, the big question in the whole span of your career? Why acting? What initially, were you bit by the acting bug at an early age?
Oh, what a good way to start. Good question. I think that I probably was and didn't know it. I used to say this, and I guess now I'll say it again. It holds up. I think I was always going to, whether I knew it or not, I was going to do something where I would express myself. So let's start with that. As simple as that. I as a kid, I'd like to draw a lot. And then later on, to keep me from getting into too much trouble, skipping class, an art teacher threw me in a classroom with a couple other of my buddies and said, sit down here, and handed us some pencils and paints. And he was so smart to do it, because I got really interested in painting for a while. I was never really a very good painter. And I always had a visual. I always had a visual sense of things. I noticed things that when I'd watch old movies on a black and white TV, early television shows as a kid growing up, I was attracted to certain things visually, more than others. And even in life, and I'm still kind of like that. When I was small, I would read, and I distinctly remember, this should have been a sign, that I would literally set the book down. And I mean, I'm young at this point, right? And this is pre-teenage, way pre-teenage. I'm very young. I can read, but I don't know if I'd be 8, maybe 9, 10, maybe. I would literally set the book down, and I'd close my eyes and I'd try to feel, I needed to know what it felt like, what I just read. I needed to know what the character, like what it really would have felt like, what I just read. Now I was admittedly, I was admittedly kind of a weird kid, but when you think about that, I guess something was going on, and I remember watching things and thinking, I don't want to just do that. I kind of want to be that, I want to be what I'm watching. You know that feeling?
Totally.
and I always knew from a pretty young age, I knew that I probably could never get up in the morning, go to a place and work and come home. I just thought, I just don't think I can do that. And I didn't think it was a bad thing. I just kind of knew instinctively. But then, you go on in life, you don't think about it. And I was never a theater kid until I got into college. And I wasn't even a theater kid then. All I really did was I had a wonderful teacher my first year. I was curious enough about drama, just reading plays, reading Chekhov and reading, I was introduced to Strindberg and, playwrights that I never read any of these. And he was a really good teacher who broke things down. And I just found it really interesting. It was simply a different, not medium, but I just had never read anything like that. And so it was interesting to me. And then I was fairly, I hung out with pretty funny people, and I was always, if I wasn't funny, I was trying to be funny. And then I got interested in writing. And then in college, I thought, I'm going to take another theater class. And it was okay. She was a nice teacher, but it didn't move me. And then I thought, my friends and I would kind of do these performances, these, impromptu things and improvise and stuff. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I'll take an acting class or I'll audition. And then I got a small part in a play, and I wasn't very good at it. And it didn't really, knock me out and say, this is it. I found no bell ever went off for me. And then I was curious about it. And then I had to drop out of school to make money. And I was working a couple of jobs. And I auditioned for a play in Pittsburgh. I auditioned for a play, and I got it. And that's when it started to take hold. I really, really liked it. And I still wasn't taking it very seriously, but I just really liked it. I got excited when I knew there was a performance that night. I'd get nervous, and kind of really good nervous, And then I tell people that I probably was always going to do something where I wanted to express myself. And then when I came out here, I was a last minute decision because I was going to New York for auditions, and I was getting ready to move there. And a friend of mine said, why don't you come out here for a while first? And I never thought I'd stay. And then one thing led to another, and it really started to take hold. And a good thing I was doing, a smart thing I was doing all along was I was writing. I think writing in general is really good for you.
Stand-up comedy or any kind of writing?
Just writing. Yeah, I started writing sketches back in Pittsburgh, and then I started writing stand-up because I was also performing stand-up at a club in Pittsburgh. And that was a big help to me because my stand-up was never really just doing jokes. They were kind of performances. I wanted to perform. I wanted to act out things on a stage. I wanted to play characters. And I was taking class. I was in class here and there. Whenever I had a few extra dollars, I'd go take a class, an acting class. But I was just kind of, at one point I said, all I really want to do right now is be as good as I can be, frankly. So it's about the quality for me. And so I finally made the decision. I said, the art, and when it's good, it's an art of stand-up, is so difficult, so hard that I either have to really commit to it to be great, or commit to the other. And I said, I think acting is more in the long run, what I really want to do. And I did both for a while, but I really then just said, you have to give into this, And
yeah, you knew early on that it required like a full commitment, no plan B, all in.
Yes. In fact, I'll tell you an interesting experience I had. And I was thinking about this, and it just happened to me after all this time. I was working on Worth, and it was one of those things, you're just in the moment in life. You're just kind of, which is not always easy to do, in a scene, how you really need to be in the moment.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you just have to be in the moment. And really the way to live life is in what they call flow, and, we're always anticipating things or thinking back, or, it's really important to stay in the present and all that. So I guess I had these few moments. I was leaving my trailer to go in and work on a scene on Worth. And it was, it was low budget, and the hours were long, and I was kind of tired, and it was getting late. It was in the night. I was walking across the parking lot and going to this office building where we had some sets built. And this really interesting thing happened. Something in my head said, wow, I really am this. It was the oddest thing. It was almost like I admitted to myself that I was an actor. It was such an odd and kind of kind
now
of
at this point in your career.
Yeah. A freeing thing. I went, this really is me. This really is me. You know, I and not just what I do for a living, because I've always described it as what I do for a living, which it is. But I went, I guess this is what I am. You know, I guess this is what I am. Yeah. It was interesting. You know, you would thought, because I don't think like that. When I'm at work, I totally think like that. But when I'm not at work, I don't really think like that.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you're saying about being versus doing. Like there's doing the job because it's your living and you're making money or however you clock in or clock out. But then there's being, like at your core, you're an artist.
I hope so. You know, I don't throw that word around a lot, but we all are. I mean, if we chose this, you might be, you know, I never like to say whether people are good at it or not. I think it's hard. I think everybody's good. Honestly, that's the only way to look at it. First of all, I think philosophically, that's just a better way to look at things. But but also it isn't easy. So I'm not one of those who believes in saying, being critical of actors or saying, oh, he's no good or she's good or they're no good or they're not as good as such and such. I never, first of all, I don't believe that. I kind of believe in that right speech, the correct speech thing on the eight-wheeled Buddhist thing, you know, that just try to live that way. And my mom lived that way. You know, we were never allowed to speak ill of people, you know. So there's that, but there's also, it's such bush league, you know, to judge other, because it's hard. Everybody's good. Everybody can have their moment, you know, you never, you know, and it depends on the opportunity you're given. Yeah.
That's all pure Backstage gold. That's very much Backstage's viewpoint, is we are always cheerleading. We know it's hard. There's no point like assigning a value judgment, especially a negative one, to this
100%
very subjective work. Yeah.
And I hate to sound Pollyanna-ish, but it's a kind of brother and sisterhood, you know.
Absolutely.
It is. It's you know, you want, and so in terms of art, for me, it's like I go, I hope I have moments of it here and there, you know. I want to think at it like that. But I guess we just, by saying, what are you? If you had to put us into categories, yes, we're artists like other people are artists too. But then to say, did I do anything that was really artful today in that scene or in that? And that's harder for me. I set that standard higher, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, which of course speaks to your process. I mean, I definitely want to ask you all about like techniques, the things that you do for every role. You've played such different roles. Like the question I sort of always ask is, are there things you do every time? Do you find that there are certain acting steps that you take, maybe in those initial, I'd love to hear about your relationship with scripts, with text.
Yeah, good question. No, I don't. There's not. Well, there are the most fundamental things I do every time. But you've probably heard this before, but to me, at least, almost everything is its own thing. I just look at it like, okay, well, what am I doing here? What's the job? And then I just proceed. So there are the basics I do. So, you know, there's never one thing. The basics would be, make sure you're totally present, make sure you're in the moment, make sure you're listening. And I was doing a television show, and the woman who was my girlfriend for a minute on the show at the time was with me, and she had done a lot more stuff than I had. And I was so nervous. I was getting ready to go out and do the scene on a sitcom, and we were backstage. And she looked at me. She looked at me and she looked me right in the eye and said, "Just tell the truth. Just remember to tell the truth." and if it wasn't tell the truth, said, or so it was something like tell the truth. And she looked at me with such conviction. And I thought, first of all, I knew that, but I never had a chance to apply it. And I only knew it kind of cerebrally, but I didn't really.
But not in practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that has always stuck with me. You always drop back to that, and you always ask the question, what do you want? And in terms of the one thing that I do is not know too much. I don't want to know too much. I don't want, because, you know, you should probably know this, but you know, you say, well, I think I want to be an actor. Then you try to be an actor, then you act. And then you say, I need to stop acting. I don't want to act anymore. To me, the best performance I've always thought would be, if you can get there, is if someone were looking through, it snuck up to your house or apartment and was looking in your window without you knowing it, would your behavior, would you just be behaving that way? You know what I mean? Without acting, without changing your behavior, because you say, well, my character would, he'd do this because he likes to, you know what I mean? Because you have to do all that stuff, like, did I just eat? Did I just come back from lunch? What do I want? All the what do you wants. But honestly, the ultimate performance for me would be that just total behavior, just no cerebral work at all, just behavior. Obviously, really difficult to get to, but that would be the ultimate to me, I think.
That sounds like being versus doing again, of like the ultimate goal of truthfulness is that you can be this person, not capital P perform this person.
Yeah. For 100%, and then of course it depends on the role. There are roles where you go, no, it's about performance. It's about it. You have to. There's some. I can't think of an example now, but you say, no, this is performance. And then when you get into the world of comedy, obviously the truth is always key. It's, the truth. Things are funny because of the truth. But then you say, yeah, but if you set the rules up correctly, you can be in the most insane situation, but it's true because you created the world, or the script has been created that this is the world you're living in. So the truth is whatever the truth is in that world that you're creating.
Sure. Yeah. So the truth thing applies to any genre, any role. Like, I like this idea of, like, certainly there are characters that require, you got to know where the camera is. Like, you got to pitch that.
Oh, for sure.
You got to be entertaining sometimes, right?
100%. And, entertaining is a tricky word, like that word would come up during Dope Sick sometimes, and I always say it's such a weird word to use, but there is some very, very subtle element of, like, some type of entertainment here and there in Dope Sick. And I don't even know if entertainment is the word, but it's a funny thing that, it's a funny thing. That's why this was really good. It was challenging. And Danny Strong did such a good job because you have to stay interested. You have to be moved by certain things. So in a weird way, it's entertaining to watch a scene about a very, very sad thing. And entertaining is probably the wrong word, but you have to be engaged and moved by it.
Moved, riveting. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the scene, I don't know how much you've seen, but it was so much fun for me because the scenes I'm not in and I wasn't prepared for just kill me, the turn that Mary Winningham, she's so great and always has been so great. Her character turn, that big turn she makes for her daughter, it's so heartbreaking, and so beautiful and true when she says, I don't care if you like girls, as she puts it, that really simple way that a woman like that would have put it, and it's so beautiful and loving,
Totally. She does beautiful. She and Caitlin Dever, you and Caitlin Dever together had me in tears. I was watching episode 7 last night.
Oh man, I can't. It's hard for me to watch her sometimes. It just kills me.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Well, and going off of that, Caitlin Dever, Mary Winningham, and your character, these are all, I think of them as ordinary. I wonder how much you approach these roles, like you were just saying about being versus doing, big versus small. Like, are you scaling it down to be, how much do you think about the everyman or naturalism?
Well, I don't know that I think about naturalism. I know that I admire it when I see it. If it's the kind of thing, like, you can't even talk about it, because once you talk about it, then you say, well, now I'm self-conscious. I'm conscious of it. It's that really weird thing where you kind of have to I want to transcend things. So I just stop and let things occur, and as long as I know the basics, as long as I know the basics and I've got my foundation, then I just kind of let the rest, one thing I've said in a couple of interviews regarding this, and I think it just kind of came to me there because of the practicalities of shooting this and the reality based on the schedule that my scheduling, I was forced to kind of give into this, and boy, it was really freeing. It's ironic, but it was freeing. The thing that was most difficult about this was that I hadn't done anything in an episodic form for a long time. But also my schedule had to be such that I could go do this other job, right? So this thing takes place over a long period of time. Then you have, the emotional arc. You have almost a geographic arc because he has to move. He moves to different, he has to lose his house, he has to move to an apartment. He literally has to move to different places. And then the whole time difference between where I am emotionally and physically. And it was shot. They were nice enough to make my schedule work for me. But what that created was a situation where you might shoot episode 6 in the morning and then go back and do 2 and 3 later in the afternoon. And then next day you do 4. And you might get lucky and get 2 days in a row of scenes that, are consistent, shot mostly somewhat in order. And at some point it was so difficult for me that what I decided to do was, as I explained, I just gave into it. I said, it's easier for me not to analyze or break this down.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I just said, the wardrobe, what he wears, you put this on every day. And the wardrobe very often gets you way down the road, at least me.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Once you get wardrobe going and you comb your hair a certain way. But what happened here was I started with the basics and then I just kind of let the guy take me where he was going to take me. He kind of knew, I kind of knew, I'm Michael. I'm not terribly different from this person, really, probably,
sure.
And so there you go. And it was, just out of practicality, it was made easier for me, ironically, that I just, I don't know, man, I'm just going to give in and I'll just show up in the morning and I'll know where to go. I'll know what to do. And not just in the day, but in the moment,
Yeah, I think that's really good advice for actors. Like the notion of giving in, kind of surrendering.
Yes.
It requires a self-confidence, I think, which maybe comes from experience, but it also is about being in the moment, listening. Do you find moments that you're out of the moment in a scene? And then you got to get back into it?
Yeah, these are such good questions. I have to tell you, not too much anymore. No. And I don't know. This is hard to explain without sounding egotistical.
Sure.
Some of this is not like a total surprise to me. It goes back to when I even started, what I observed, what I noticed, and what I liked anyway, so maybe it's become more refined, but, and also because I created some characters that were large early on. And then that was, I kind of had to not wean myself off of it, but you know what I mean? Not
to wean us off of it.
Yeah, because I was being asked to do it.
Yeah.
And so early on, I made certain choices to say, well, I can see where this could lead, and I'll be so bored with myself, which I already do get bored with myself anyway. That's why I kind of slowed down even doing this for a while. But that's one reason. But also, you kind of, if a role came along now and it didn't require me what we're talking about now, this kind of just being in the moment. Mm-hmm. If it required something else, I just have to do that, but even when I started out in my first, I guess it wasn't my very, very first film, I did a little small thing, I think, I can't really remember, but in Night Shift, it was for sure I needed to be funny and wanted to be funny and improvised a lot and rewrote some things because I was definitely going for laughs for sure. But it was always based on the person. Mm-hmm. Even when I'm doing comedies, it's never time out for a joke, even though I have violated that rule for sure.
Oh, sure.
I went, oh man, I'm going to get a laugh here. I can't resist it. It's too good. I got to do it. But it was always based, that character, Billy Blazkowski, was based on a character. I created a guy. Yeah. I didn't go, in other words, there were certain things I wasn't going to do because I just knew the guy would do it. I created a world. So it was never really just go be funny. I always wanted to be funny once again, we're talking about the truth. You go, yeah, he's this guy. He does all those things. He's funny. But to him, all of this makes total sense. And so some of it is learned. Some of it is just experience. But I don't know what would have happened if early on I was given a role where it wasn't kind of on the big side. If I would have gotten to this, and then I have to do a lot of things. You're just fortunate, you're at the right age at the right time. You're given the right opportunity. You have the right look. A lot of stuff like that. That's it's just good fortune.
Sure. Well, and I definitely wanted to ask you about that because you've said great things about just this notion of persevering in this very fickle industry for as long as you have.
Yes.
What is the early career acting advice is always like an interesting question. I feel like for you, you had this combined approach of saying no to certain roles and saying yes to others.
Yes.
And I guess I don't know how to translate that into advice. What do you tell early career actors today? Do you think they should say yes to everything? Is it that same notion of keep audiences surprised?
This is not a simple question, a simple answer, because it depends on the person. I can't tell somebody what to do if they're not built like that, or if they have to go out and pay their rent. That's a realistic thing.
Yeah.
That's part of the job, man. You got to make money to pay rent, to get a little bit of insurance, whatever you do. So to say that's not a consideration is just bullshit. It's a consideration.
Yeah.
I will tell you, this is another thing I've never talked about much or said, but I appreciate the attention. I'm grateful for it, but I never really I didn't have a ton of doubt. I will tell you that. I didn't, not that I just knew everything all the time, but I always, I never gave in to desperation. I certainly had many moments of going, oh boy, this is a nervous time, or I'm not feeling too secure right now. But desperation will kill you. And also, but I also kind of, without sounding egotistical, I always just kind of had this. I mean, Alejandro's been, I guess it's complimentary, saying, he didn't know an actor who was as confident as I am. Well, I'm not always, obviously, because no one is, but I had a kind of thing where I thought, first of all, early on, I told myself, you're never going to know if you can do this until you just try to do it. And if it doesn't work, you can always live. You're not going to die. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things I would say. I personally chose to play the long game and always bet on me. I just made that decision.
Bet on me.
I'm going to bet on me. I'm going to bet that down the road, I'm going to be okay, and I'll create it. But it's hard, and it's easy to tell somebody to do that. Some people don't subscribe to that, and some people don't necessarily want to live like that. But that's me. And so early on, I kind of thought, and I was lucky that I got a couple jobs right away, and I thought, boy, this is going to be really good. And then I immediately went south temporarily, where I wasn't getting anything and my money was running low, and I thought, oh boy, this is good. I see how this works. This isn't like once you get going, you're in at all.
No.
And so already I knew there were going to be some ups and downs, and I just kind of thought, I'm never going to give in. I'm never going to get desperate. I'm going to get worried, and I'm going to feel insecure here and there. But I'm not going to give in to desperation, and I just don't feel it anyway. So I refused to, and I had some kind of weird confidence going on, and I kind of knew some of these things were ultimately, if I hung around and if I kept my eye on the ball and I wasn't distracted by too many things, and I do get distracted, that in the long run, I know I have it. I know I have the goods, and it's just a question of, will I get the shot? And then you have to kind of create your own shots. And here's another thing I'll since you're talking about advice, make mistakes, man. Not just in acting, go make them. Yeah. Just make mistakes. Just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't play it safe all the time. That doesn't mean go do something stupid, but take chances. My favorite actors are the ones who are courageous. Even when they fail, I go, man, I love that she went there, or that she tried that, or he did that. I just love courage. And the thing that was a big thing for me was when it came to auditions, the way I turned the corner was here's what I did. I never looked at auditions. After a while, I'd have a good one. I'd be convinced I got the job. And I realized later I wasn't even close. I didn't get that job at all, but I thought I was good. And then other times I just knew I was no good. And then you get very nervous, and then you start to say, I've got to get this thing.
That's the desperation.
It's desperation. And maybe it's just because, I don't know why, but I made this decision. I never looked at an audition as an audition again. I looked at it like this. I said, no, I got the job. Somebody called and said, you have to be out at at such and such's office, so-and-so's office, or at the studios in the Valley at 3:30. We'll send you the scripts, the sides. Here's the scene. You're reading with the casting director. To me, I didn't look at it I quit looking at it as an audition. Like, I hope I get this. I said, oh, I have a job. Here's my job.
Yeah.
I have a script. I went to work. And even if I was only there 25 minutes, when I left, I was getting off work. So I said,
I love that.
Doesn't matter if I got the job. I already got the job. You left saying, I was pretty good today, or I was really good today. It took the onus. It took I got to get this. It took it away. I already got it. I already had the job. They didn't pay me. I now have to go to my regular job.
Yes. But that's part of the gig too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it became fun. Then I could relax and just I have so much fun at auditions, I just didn't care. I mean, I really cared. And then of course there would be some where you'd say, this is really a really good job. I remember I had an audition to be on the show Taxi, which is really a good show, the Danny DeVito show. So good, written by the Charles brothers. And I didn't get it. That one I knew. I said, oh, this is good. And I it's not that I blew it. I just made the wrong choice probably in how I went at it, and I didn't get it. That one bugged me. It's not like I always walked away saying, whatever, easy come, easy go. But that really made a big difference. I always tell when actors ask me anything, first of all, I'm not sure I know what I'm talking about, but
absolutely.
But I do talk about that. And I said that helped me enormously.
That's spot on advice. Yeah. For auditioners, I think. And it just sounds like this philosophy of like, that you're going to have jobs like Taxi that pass you by.
Yeah.
You knew going into this that there would be less than ideal gigs. There'd be difficulties connecting with characters or booking them at all. Like, it sounds like you had a realistic approach to this industry.
I guess I did. Yeah, I guess I did. I guess that's big part of it. Yeah.
And then it is just a question of, like you're saying, like making these choices based on your gut and based on I guess that kind of goes back to truthfulness too, telling the truth. You tried to gravitate towards the characters that resonate with you, right?
Yeah. And also, can I do this and can I be really good at this? You want to talk about choices that does this work for me? Is this a good thing? Do I know how to do it? Can I be really good in this?
That's the key.
But that was me, and I always knew that, like I said, I was in it for the long haul. I gambled that if I don't do this, that doesn't mean that's not going to happen, or that's not going to happen, and that's not going to happen. And I made some big, bold decisions, and I said, this is hard now, but if I'm right about how I feel about myself, it may take a while, but it'll pay off in the long run. It'll pay off. And so, some decisions were tough ones and hard ones, and some were really good ones, and almost all of them were proven. I kind of was proven to be not right. Like, look at me, I'm right, I'm so smart. Just, my instinct was mostly right. But that's me. I also believe in people who say, I just like to work. I want to work. Don't overanalyze it. I like to work. So I'm going to work.
Sure.
I'm going to do a lot of jobs. I'm going to have fun, and I'm envious of that sometimes. And I've gone through streaks like that, but I don't have a need to be working all the time. I have a lot of interests too. I'm a curious person. The other thing I'd say, getting back to some suggestions, really stay curious. It really helps to be curious. The great thing about doing stand-up when I was doing it was, once again, I was going to work at night. I wasn't making any money, but I was forced to be on a stage. The other thing I tell people is get on a stage somewhere. I don't care if the stage is a little riser, like 8 inches high, and there's only 11 people. It's a little space. It doesn't have to be the thing, anything. Just if you get an opportunity to say, yeah, man, I'm going to go two shows this week, and I'm just going to do them, and just to walk around on a stage and just to say words out loud. And it's like being in the gym,
Yeah, I mean, and it's certainly like, especially with stand up, I feel like it's embracing the possibility of failure while still doing that thing of what you're saying of like, try to make everything that you're doing the best possible thing. Like, have a strong work ethic about it.
Yes.
Without the desperation part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is all really excellent advice. Michael, thank you. I have to ask to get back to Dope Sick. Speaking of this notion of like this long career of these choices that you've made, do you find that there are some full circle moments? I'm thinking of Clean and Sober. Do old roles resurface?
Maybe. I mean,
you're also reprising Batman. So there's
right. I was going to say, well, some do. That's for sure. It was made easier. I can't remember if we talked about this when we first started, but having done Clean and Sober helped a lot. First of all, when I signed on, I wasn't totally sure where the character was going. There were only certain X amount of episodes done.
Okay.
And then I went, oh boy, I'm going to have to work a lot harder than I thought I was. So I was lucky that I did Clean and Sober.
Yeah.
Because I retained a lot of that. It's weird how you kind of hang on to certain things.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I remembered a lot of the research I had done, and things kind of get clearer as you're working on them. So yeah, it does come around. And in terms of Flash, yeah, I guess certain things do come around. Now that's an interesting, how that all happened, because everyone knows about the controversy over whether I should do it or be the one or whatever. That's been talked about to death. But to me, it was, I know the name of the movie is Batman, and it's hugely iconic and very cool and culturally iconic. And because of Tim Burton, artistically iconic. Yeah. He's a true artist. I always knew from the get-go it was Bruce Wayne. That was the secret. It was never... I never talked about it, but people said, Batman, you have to be Batman. Batman does this. And I kept thinking to myself, y'all are thinking wrong here.
From a character perspective.
It's about Bruce Wayne. Who's that guy? What kind of person does that?
Sure.
And when the director who directed the third one, I said, I just can't do it. One of the reasons I couldn't do it was he asked, he's a nice enough man, he's passed away. So, I wouldn't speak ill of him even if he were alive, but I'm not speaking ill of him here. He at one point, after more than a couple of meetings where I kept trying to rationalize doing it and hopefully kind of talking him into saying, I think we don't want to go in this direction. Really, I think we got to go in this direction. And he wasn't going to budge. But I remember one of the things I walked away going, oh boy, I can't do this. Or he asked me, he said, I don't understand why everything has to be so dark and everything's so sad. And I went, wait a minute. Do you know how this guy got to be Batman? Have you read? I mean, it's pretty simple. And so it was always Bruce Wayne. It was never Batman. It was like, who does that? Who becomes that? Who decides to, what kind of person? And then a lot of that work, you just read the Frank Miller stuff and talk to Tim.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, this is what I'm seeing. And, we all know his history. We all know what happened to him as a young boy. You got a lot of your work done for you right there, just work from that. And then I wanted to make him my take on him. There's all that. And then my take on him, it coincided with what Tim was saying. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, and the Bruce Wayne versus Batman of it all, like you mentioned the clothes. I wanted to ask about physicality and like almost the outside in approach. I guess when you're wearing a mask and armor, what you're saying about Bruce Wayne is like you can make more choices as the billionaire Bruce Wayne and not as many choices when you're right in a costume.
Yeah, and man, it was so bold, that costume, that I thought, and I said this early on, I said, just, just work that suit, and no one knew whether that suit would work at all until the morning we're getting ready to shoot the first stuff.
Sure.
And I said, no, make this part of the thing. Make this part of the thing. Some of that came out of practicality, I had to move, but a lot of it was, and so one thing I did in that was I said, no, wait a minute. This is so big, it's so bold that, look at what this looks like. Look at what I am. Look at what he does, blah, blah, blah. You go, okay, now you certainly, something has to happen and Tim and I would talk about his two sides of his personality. And I made a choice that he actually, because he transcends, he drops into another level of consciousness. This was all me, like early on, one of the things I guess I didn't mention is one of the basic things you try to do is write out a backstory for your character. I don't care if it's 7 sentences long.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So for
and
me,
if it's based on existing IP, like you're still inventing a little bit.
Yeah, I had to justify, how does this guy do something where I know look like this screen? I had to justify what you can't act. Bruce Wayne couldn't be Bruce Wayne once he puts this thing on. And I go, how does he get to that? And how does he physically know how to do these things? And so I made a choice just to justify it, that he kind of went into a zone. And we shot a scene. I asked him to shoot a scene where you see me kind of in the eyes, and you see me kind of go into this weird kind of meditation where I kind of disappear and lose myself in order to be Batman, because that's the only way I could rationalize what he was about to go do or how he could really do it. Because once again, I had to believe it. I had to believe that could really happen.
Yeah, you are approaching him like a human person, where you're doing a little bit of the what would I do in this person's shoes thing. Yep. And it can't be, going back to the big comedy stuff, it has to be truthful. It can't be caricature. Right. Like it can't be a cartoon. Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to make him, he was quirky, and I wanted to play that, and I wanted to make him not always sure of himself and kind of odd, an unusual guy. And there was almost no humor in it. And Tim and I would find spots to be, funny.
Very cool. Let me ask you one more actorly question. We ask this of everyone.
Yeah.
What is one performance you think every actor should see, and why? That can be film, TV, theater, maybe something that's really stuck with you.
Oh man.
We always stump people with this one.
Yeah, because you go, where do I start? Just when you start thinking of one, you go, wait, there's another one. Robert Duvall in Tender Mercies is one.
Oh, great. Yeah.
That's one. I'd have to think about it and this is going to drive me crazy now. And I'm not, the rest of the day I'm thinking about this.
Absolutely. What about, is there something you've seen recently that was really inspiring or really noteworthy?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it seems like I'm more in awe. It seems like there's more talented people around now than ever. Or just might be, the way I look at things now. I don't know, but just about anything Joaquin Phoenix does. Heath Ledger's taken, Jack's a friend of mine, and I thought what Jack did with the Joker was great. And then when you see what Heath Ledger did, that was pretty mind blowing. But then you go, and that guy did that, and then he did Brokeback Mountain too. Look at the things Ralph Fiennes does. And people don't appreciate what range that guy has. But just about anything Joaquin Phoenix does, I kind of can't take my eyes off of. I just, you want to talk about guts and courage. Oh boy.
Totally. Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much for opening up and just letting us into your process.
Yeah, no, this was nice. I enjoyed doing this, actually. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Casey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.